Lots of pro and college football to digest from this weekend, but one thing is clear. Nearly every team I watch has a long way to go. It's a long season. We'll do our best to keep our perspective. The OFN on PSN starts now. All right, so week one in the books in the NFL, and I guess you can call it week two in college football. First full weekend of football either way. That's really the only thing that matters. And we're going to be here to, at least for the next half hour or so, Jamal Murphy will join me in about 15 minutes to talk fantasy football. David Johnson looks like he's going to go on IR, so that's huge. And we'll talk about our matchup, which Jamal has won already, even though I have two players going. That's what happens when Le'Veon Bell and Martavis Bryant lay an egg. You know, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh. They did. I mean, how many times can you throw the ball to Antonio Brown? I mean, what's up with that? Seriously. I mean, wow. I mean, look, I guess you just keep doing it. Cleveland can't stop him, but it's like you can't do anything else against Cleveland but throw the ball to Antonio Brown. Anyway, so that's the way it is. We'll talk fantasy in a little bit. Let's start off with college football, though, because Oklahoma beat Ohio State, and we're not really surprised about that. We talked about that as a very distinct possibility. We thought that considering Oklahoma had lost Ohio State last year, that, you know, it's college football. This is what happens when you get two perennial top 5, top 10 teams that play at home and home. And even though you lose the first one at home, it doesn't mean you're going to lose the next one on the road. That's just college football. I said it the other day. Ohio State, matter of fact, Ohio State's one of those teams. You know, when you get these really good teams, and you would think that the really good teams would never lose at home. If you're going to get these teams, you got to get them on the road. I mean, you got to get them in your home stadium, because there's no way you're going to beat. They're too good. You can't beat them at home. But that's not always the case. A lot of times with these really good programs in college football, if you would just stick to a college football perspective, what makes them really good is that they can go on the road and beat you and beat you and beat you and beat you. It's when they go home and they got the distractions, they're heavy favorites, everybody expects them to win. That's when sometimes you're a little bit vulnerable. And so, yeah, the home crowd thing to me in that matchup meant nothing, especially considering what happened last year. And Baker Mayfield went off with 386, 3 touchdowns. Huge game, best game of his career. I mean, not even close, best game of his career. So huge performance from Baker Mayfield. Well, look, Ohio State, we said this the other day, and of course I didn't even put them anywhere near in my 4 playoff teams. And matter of fact, I had Penn State not only as my playoff team representing the Big Ten, but my overall championship team. Even though right now it's kind of close between Penn State and USC. I think right now it's a Penn State USC championship game for me. Rematch of the Rose Bowl. And nothing that I saw this past weekend was going to change my mind about that. But what will change my mind, at least until Auburn and Gus Malzahn wakes the freak up, because here we go again. This is going on now. You know, I've been watching football for a very long time, and I'm so amazed with how much this goes on. This continues to go on in both pro and college football with coaches that just don't understand how to deal with quarterbacks. Because the quarterback position, as we all know, is the most important position in football. And it's also the position that a lot of coaches just don't get right. You get some coaches that you think, you know what, it's probably better if they give this guy a shot. Stick with him through the good and bad. And then you know what they do instead? They flip-flop. Then you get other coaches on teams where you go, you know what? I mean, this guy's got to have a small window. I mean, if he doesn't do well, you got to bring the other guy in and give him a shot. And what does that coach do? He gives the guy a long leash. It goes on and on and on. And if I have to, I mean, I don't know how many times you hear about guys that hey, practice, spring practice. Hey, he looked better than the other guy in practice, so he gets the job. it's like Stidham for Auburn. Now, if you watched Auburn Tiger football last year, Sean White actually played well when he was healthy. He played well. Now, I don't care about anything else. I don't care about stats or anything other than the fact that when Sean White was in there, and he didn't have a good season in 2015. He didn't look good at all. And I was actually kind of surprised at how much better he looked last year. He looked better. So and matter of fact, so much so that last year, if you were listening, you remember how much we thought Auburn was a really good sleeper pick down the stretch, the way things were going, that maybe they could sneak in backdoor. You know, they had I understand it. They had the 2 losses early in the season, even though they were good losses, but still they're in the SEC. Well, because they could still get to the SEC championship game and wind up more than likely in the playoffs. Because who's going to leave out an SEC champion in the postseason, right? I mean, in the 14 playoff. But then came the Georgia game and the injury to Sean White, and it was all over. They scored 7 points. All they had to do, if Sean White would have played in that game, they would have beat Georgia. And even the Alabama game wasn't all that bad. They only lost the game by like 2 scores, something like that. 18 points, something like that. Because their defense played excellent last year. And so far, their defense looks really good again. But Stidham was terrible. Terrible. Now, if Auburn wants a chance to win a championship this year, okay, they can do, they had better either see some sort of dramatic improvement from Stidham, and I'm not talking about in the game against Mercer this week. I'm talking about when they go on the road against Missouri. Because I doubt that Malzahn will switch quarterbacks. Because I don't think he's going to be smart enough to do that. Because he should. Because he should have been smart enough to play Sean White in the game against Clemson. It was very obvious by the time you got to the 4th quarter that Stidham was not going to lead that team back. He was shell-shocked. He was bad. Yes, you give a lot of credit to Clemson's defense. Boy, were they awesome. Now, the thing, though, is Clemson's defense, as awesome as it looked, they can't win a championship unless the young quarterback, Bryant, grows fast. But at least, okay, as a freshman, you give him a shot. But he's got a long way to go. And he did face a very good defense. But he has a lot of inexperience around him. It's not like last year's team. I mean, there's so many weapons on Clemson that are right now gone. Some of them playing in the NFL. So it's not easy for him being a freshman, but it is what it is. And he's going to have to grow up. And he's going to have to try, because look, it doesn't, I look at that, and by the way, I don't mean freshman, not with Bryant. I mean first-time starter, excuse me. When you're taking a look, because I think that was his first start. I think it was. So I think when you're taking a look, because the freshman came in after him when he was injured. And yet Auburn still couldn't beat them. So, but that defense was so awesome. It's only going to be able to carry them so far, though. It's not like last year's team. It's sort of like, to tell you the truth, I don't think it's a whole lot different to what we saw at Auburn last year when White went down. Your defense can win these types of games when you're playing against another quarterback that stinks, like Stidham. But you go up against really good teams, and it's just you just can't keep winning like that. You're going to lose a game here, you're going to lose a game there, and that's it. You're not going to you won't get to the postseason. You won't get to the 14 playoff that way. So Bryant is going to have to really step things up for the team. And look, with Francois out, we kind of touched up on this last week. Florida, I wouldn't even rule Florida State out because of the fact that we have to see what this kid, the freshman, does. Because just losing to Alabama is not going to knock you out of the playoffs. And then you got, of course, the Heisman winner at Louisville. So you got some. It's not going to be so easy for any of those teams. But for Auburn, because they're in the ACC, Clemson, still, even though they won the championship, the ACC is not the SEC. See, for Auburn, it's still, hey, you know what? It's okay. It's one game. It's at Clemson, defending champions. We can run the table. We'll win the championship. But they're not winning the championship with Stidham. All right? Get Sean White in there. Give him a chance. Why didn't you just give him a chance? Why didn't you just give him a series or two? What is wrong with that? Why do you have to care about whether Stidham loses confidence or I don't even know what other explanations there are. Because if the quarterback loses confidence that you're taking him out for a series or two, then he shouldn't be in there anyway. And look, I'm a Michigan fan, and I've said this last year, and I'm saying it again. As much as I'm a big Jim Harbaugh fan, and as long as he's there, they're going to win championships because sooner or later, Wilton Speight will be gone, and they have all these 5-star quarterbacks that are on the roster, including McCaffrey, who will probably battle with Peters next year to be the starter. Hopefully as early as this year. They might even decide. They maybe even should decide to take the red shirt off of McCaffrey, because there's no way Michigan. I mean, see, I was looking at the situation with Alabama a few years ago when they won the championship with Coker because they had a great defense and they ran the ball. Now Michigan doesn't have that dynamic Heisman running back that Alabama had, but they're running the ball. They got a running game. Okay, they could run the ball a little bit, and they play pretty good defense. So if Speight can just improve like Coker did at the end of the season, because nobody expected Coker to play like that in the playoff games, then I guess there's a possibility. But I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing anything different from Speight that I saw last year. Nothing. And he just, again, Cincinnati of all teams, you can't throw Peters in there. We can't see Peters play a couple of different series to see what can happen. Oh, but what? I guess what? He didn't play well in practice? Because we all know that if you don't play well in practice, you can't play well in the field. We all know that, which is just stupid. So look, Michigan's going to win a lot of games, but they're not winning a national championship with Wilton Speight. Okay, and there you go. And the kid can play another year next year, which is like, I'm already like, no way. There's no way you can play Wilton Speight for 3 years at Michigan. You can't do that. You cannot do that to the team. It is unfair. It's unfair to everybody to hold everybody back because of one guy. That Georgia Notre Dame game. Oh my goodness. Okay, it was close. It was exciting, I guess, but I mean Notre Dame. I mean Wimbush. You if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're probably hoping, okay, maybe they got something there. They don't. There's nothing special there from what I see. Not surprised that Fromm had some issues because he's a young kid. He's a freshman playing in a huge road game at Notre Dame. Touchdown Jesus, crying out loud. So it's not going to be easy for him. But I will say this. I mean, they can get Eason back. All right, then I'm interested in Georgia. I will keep my eye on Georgia as a potential dark horse now. Now that they've beaten Notre Dame. I will seriously say, you know what? Maybe Georgia's a team to keep an eye on. They play. They should be able to. I mean, look, I'm not saying they're going to beat Tennessee on September 30th, but they should be able to. As far as the one major stumbling block for sure is November 11th at Auburn. And USC Stanford, Darnold, after a so-so first week against Western Michigan, had a huge game against Stanford. Yes, he threw a couple of picks, but he was 21 of 26 for 4 touchdowns. And by the way, USC is not all Sam Darnold. And that's why USC, without a doubt, right now the best team in the Pac-12. And USC will play Penn State, will go with Penn State to the Final Four. This USC team, when you take a look at all the crap that's out there and all the games, I watch a lot of games. I watch a lot of ugly offenses. I just named a couple. I named Auburn. I named Clemson. And those to be good teams. Look at Ohio State. JT Barnett, talked about him. They got to move on from him. Remember, they won the championship a couple of years because Barnett got hurt. And they were lucky that they had Cardell Jones for that little stretch. Georgia. Notre Dame. Look at the other quarterbacks, the way they played. Look at Wilton Speight. And these are supposed to be some of the big programs. So when you watch USC play the way USC plays, and you look at the way their offense runs the ball like a freaking machine, how are you stopping them? How are they not going to the playoffs? And it's not just Darnold. And Ronald Jones, Dan Shanka, we talked about him the other day. It's not just Ronald Jones. They got this dynamic major talent. What is he, a 5-star talent, Stephen Carr. And he's every bit as good as he should have been. I mean, that guy is, Jones and Carr at running back, Darnold at quarterback, Burnett at receiver. I'm sorry, Les, does USC maybe have some issues stopping the opposition? Yes, I think they do. That's why if they wind up playing, let's say, a Penn State in the playoffs again, you're going to see a carbon copy of the type of game that they had. 52-49. That's what you're going to see. But that's what we want to see. So Oklahoma, though, huge win because of the fact that they knew, and everybody knows that if Oklahoma is going to be one of those teams that's going to have a realistic chance for the playoffs, they can't lose this game. They can't. But the fact that they won that game in that conference, which is not a great conference, that means they have one, outside the home games, one game to win. So if they win all the rest of their home games, because they're going to beat Baylor on the road, they're going to beat Kansas on the road, and they're going to beat, I'm not going to, it's not a gimme with Kansas State, but they'll beat them probably, unless Kansas State's better than we think, and that's always possible with Bill Snyder. But the one game, which is going to be huge, is the one in Stillwater, because I still really like Oklahoma State, because Oklahoma State's already in my playoffs right now. But now I got to think about, but I'm still going to stick with Oklahoma State. But only one Big 12 team can get in. And now it's looking more and more like Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, who wins that game is going to wind up being in the in that Final Four playoff with Penn State, with USC. And now I just got to think about who that fourth team is. But again, look, Auburn still has a shot. Yes, I guess Alabama, even though Alabama's offense is okay, it's nothing great. I still got to see Alabama play a few more times against some better competition before I'm a little bit more convinced that it's just, business as usual, which, probably will be. But I could definitely see Auburn beating Alabama. They play him at Auburn as long as Sean White gets in there and plays and not Stidham. See, with Alabama, this is what they do every year. They have that first game of the season. They usually schedule well, and then they don't have to really play anyone. I mean, then their other two non-conference games are against, the Sisters of the Poor. And then in the SEC, like this year, what are their road games? The only tough game they go on the road, well, Texas A&M may not be that easy, but Auburn, that's it. Every other game is at home. I'm telling you, Alabama, even though they're in the SEC, they just got to win that first game of the season, and they're free. Because even if they end up losing a game the rest of the way, which a lot of times they do, they drop that one game, then that's enough. That's it. That's all they got to do. They got to the SEC championship game. They'll beat up the other divisional opponent in the SEC championship game. They're in the postseason. They're in the Final Four. But I still think Auburn can beat Alabama if they go to Sean White. Forget Stidham. All right, so forget that. All right, let's talk some NFL, and let's welcome in Jamal Murphy to the show. And again, you can catch Jamal Murphy on the Bill Roden On Sports podcast at iTunes, and he was also with me a little bit earlier talking Jets football. That was pretty depressing.
Yeah, very depressing. I'd much rather talk fantasy.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Let's start, first of all, by the way, with the big news. And now we haven't heard anything, I haven't heard anything yet that says it's definite, but it looks like David Johnson might end up on IR. That doesn't mean he's lost for the season. But I'll tell you right now, a lot of people thought Arizona could be, they were a very trendy pick to rebound after a poor year last year. But with David Johnson looking like he's probably going on IR, even though he may come back, you know what? I don't think it's going to matter, because if you watch that game against Detroit, they were awful, at least on offense. They were terrible.
Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it doesn't help that David Johnson looks like he's, most likely, they're talking surgery, most likely out for a long period of time. We don't know how long. So, that killed. He was most people's first overall pick in the fantasy world. So not only does it hurt Arizona, but it hurts normal guys like you and me.
Yeah. Now, I was able to get Le'Veon Bell with the second pick, even though he had a bad game, which was good for you, since I played you this week and you beat me.
Yeah, that was great.
And this is what happens. You get in a situation like, for instance, that matchup. A lot of times you look at matchups and you're thinking, see, this is why I don't really like the matchup thing. And we talked to Dan Weinrich, our co-host, who's with us each week, and he asked a question about matchups, and I answered it because it's topical, and that's what we do on the fantasy shows. But I don't like the matchup thing, and this is why. Because you just never know. Like, you would think, oh, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Bell, Bryant, they should have big games, and they did nothing.
Right. Right. No, I mean, Bell. It was somewhat tricky. He's such a good back. You expect him to just, step right in and run for 150 yards or something like that. But remember, he basically held out all preseason. Came in last minute, so I guess there was some rust on him. Most likely, I doubt it was really the Cleveland defense.
Well, I'm actually very impressed with what I saw from the Cleveland defense with Greg Williams in the preseason.
Hmm.
I do think they're better. I don't think there's any
Okay.
question about that. But
Okay.
this doesn't surprise me, I guess, a little bit because I think we've seen Pittsburgh, even with Roethlisberger over his career, he'll have like 3 or 4 games during the season. The Pittsburgh offense, and it usually happens when you don't expect it. Like not in the big matchups, it happens when you don't expect it, where you go, well, this is ugly. I mean, they just aren't
Right.
playing well, and they just didn't play well. I mean, they didn't. I mean, I don't even know how. I mean, I don't even recall many circumstances where they just marched down the field. They just didn't do that.
Right, and it wasn't just them. I mean, it seemed like a lot of teams on Sunday. I mean, you mentioned it on the Jets broadcast that there were a lot of bad footballs,
Oh yeah.
particularly bad offensive football in the first week of the NFL. I mean, Atlanta didn't play well. A few other teams that you think would put up big numbers. Even New England and Brady, they didn't do what we thought they'd do. Kansas City had a great game and had about, I think Kansas City actually had 3 of the 5 top fantasy production players for the week. So KC
Against
was,
New England.
if you had anybody from them, yeah, against New England of all
Great
teams. So
matchup, right?
if you had anybody on that team, you're pretty happy.
Yeah. Let me stay away from the Chiefs' offensive players this week. They're playing New England, and then they go ahead and they all bust out.
Right.
By the way, as far as some rookies, because we talked a lot about that being over at Ourlads, that's a very important part of everything they do, of course, and several rookies that we talked a lot about, both with some of the articles and on the show on Friday. Some of them actually came through. Your favorite rookie came through, Tarek Cohen from
Right.
Chicago. What a huge
Right.
game in his first game. I mean, he could have had more points. I mean, he played really well. Kenny Galladay
Yep.
had a couple of touchdowns. Cooper Kupp led the
Yep.
Rams in receiving. So, boy, these guys are not going away. That's why we talked about them. These are legit rookies.
Right, and all three, you got to look, especially in waiver wire leagues, you got to look to try to pick them up. They're available in those 10-team, even some 12-team leagues. These guys were under the radar. We tried to tell you about them. In fact, I didn't listen to my own advice.
I know. I couldn't. I
picked
couldn't
up
believe
Cohen,
it.
and I didn't.
I was like, what is it? I thought you would have been on your bench. I was like, what's he doing on the waiver wire in our league? You don't even listen
Right,
to yourself.
Hey, man, yeah. I was caught sleeping there. Hopefully, I might get them.
Hey, they're all available.
I'm a number 2 on the waiver wire in our league, so maybe I have a shot. I will try. But yeah, like you said, your guy Cooper Kupp, you talked about him all preseason. He looked, fabulous for the Rams, and then you have Goff, another guy who, if he's on the waiver wire, you got to like what Goff did.
Absolutely.
Throwing for over 300 yards. So there's some people out there.
And let me tell you something. I know it's the Colts, but usually, look, if a team does something that you completely don't expect, that's one thing. After you've looked at them in the whole preseason and the off season, and you have a kind of I kind of think this is where this team's going. And I don't really think they're doing this. And then they do this. Well, that's different. But when you kind of are like, I don't know, I'm kind of interested to see what happens here. But yeah, it's the Rams. And then they come out and play like that. I tell you what, I'm already buying in because McVay, this is what we talk about all the time with coaches. McVay, the best thing that could happen to Jared Goff. And Goff, look, we saw him definitely play better in the preseason after the way he looked last year. You've got Gurley, you've got Kupp,
Right.
You've got Watkins, you've got Woods. They drafted the tight end, Everett. They brought in Whitworth. I mean, this team is not going away. This is not going to be an easy team to play with. And now they get, what's his name back? Aaron Donald.
Right. Yeah, no, the Rams look really good. Like, I think it all starts. Well, obviously it's Goff showing he can play in the offense and more weapons. But Gurley looked like a beast out there. Look completely healthy, really spry out there. I mean, if they can get that from him, and we know he has talent, that's a very dangerous team.
All right. Let's see. Now, another player that you thought could be, we had talked about, can you name a player that could be sort of like kind of like a comeback player, somebody to keep an eye on that didn't particularly do too well last year, and you even had him on your fantasy team, and he definitely stepped up and looks a lot healthier for the Packers, and that's Randall Cobb.
Yeah, obviously I was happy with his production. Yeah, like you said, he was one of those guys I was looking really closely at this first game to see how involved in the offense he was, and obviously I was happy. First series, Aaron Rodgers looking for him. He ended up with 9 catches, 85 yards. So he's definitely on the radar there. As long as he stays healthy, he's a guy that's probably going to produce all season.
All right, with Carolina having such a bad year last year and Cam Newton not playing, did you see enough of Cam Newton to make you think that maybe he can be more like the guy from 2015, be a legitimate number one starter that you can rely on, or do you still need to see more time? What did you see there?
Yeah, I mean, you had to be disappointed in Cam Newton in his performance week one. Obviously, there he has an excuse a little bit. He looked very, very
erratic.
rusty.
Yeah.
Horrible overthrows.
Yes.
I mean, guys wide open, and he misses them by about 10, 20 yards, either long, short, high, low. So you just gotta hope that that's just pure rust. He didn't play much in the preseason. We know he's a serious athlete. We know he's very talented. I would bet on Cam Newton. It may take 3 or 4 games. That's what it looked like at least week one. But I would bet that he comes around into form as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, that's the thing. See, I'm willing to go, you know what? I know he wasn't sharp, but the defense played well. They got a comfortable win on the road. I don't care if San Francisco still. Win's a win, easy win, considering the season they had last year. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense to think that Cam will be able to kind of get into a rhythm in the next few weeks. And if that happens, then that could be that could make things very interesting in that NFC South, which could be the toughest division in football. And who would have thought that a couple years ago?
Right, and at least that's one of the deepest divisions as far as quarterback goes. I mean, you got Matt Ryan, Breeze, Jameis Winston, and Cam Newton. And I was watching, I forget what it was, Fox maybe, and Randy Moss, who's a commentator now. He actually thought that Cam Newton was the worst quarterback in that division, healthy or not. So that was pretty interesting.
All right. Well, also the NFC East. They had a couple of matchups, and boy, that Philadelphia-Washington game, big plays, big turnovers, crazy game. It's funny, the announcer, I don't know if you were watching the game at the time, the announcer, first of all, because I remember him saying this for 2 reasons. One, because he said it, and I was like, come on, that's just dumb. I hear this all the time, and it's stupid. And the other thing was, he said it at the time where he kind of put the whammies on Kirk Cousins, and that was when Washington had the ball late, and the analyst goes, well, if Kirk Cousins wants to prove that he's a franchise quarterback, this is his perfect time to prove it. Goes back to pass, strip sack, touchdown Eagles. And
exactly.
Yeah, and first of all, when he's saying that, because I've heard it before, it's like, wait. Look, you either think Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback or you don't. That's it. He doesn't have to prove anything else to me. He is what he is. Okay, I don't, because I think he's done pretty well. Can he be better? I guess he can be a little bit better, but a franchise quarterback to me is a lot different than being elite. Franchise quarterbacks are guys that, hey, you can be comfortable. They could be around for the next 5 or 10 years. You lock them up, and if you have a good defense and a good coaching staff, you can win a Super Bowl. That's a good franchise quarterback to me. He's a franchise quarterback in my mind. Now, is he elite? No, but there's only a couple of those guys in the league. So when some of these analysts kind of want to make this out to be like, because of the contract situation, like Kirk Cousins needs to continue to prove himself, I mean, it's just ridiculous. So what do you, when you look at the fantasy perspective, because a lot, I know in our league, I know in my other league, we don't have negative points for turnovers, but in the league I'm in with you, there are those turnovers. So But what do you think about the value of Cousins fantasy wise as opposed to just regular NFL because of the fact that last year he had a pretty successful fantasy season.
Yeah, I mean, I think fantasy wise, he's probably even better than in real life. I mean, he's gonna get he's gonna get you numbers. Yes, he can be turnover prone at times, but they're gonna throw the ball in Washington. He's gonna get you numbers. Now, will that translate into wins? I'm less confident in that, but I am confident that he'll throw a couple of touchdowns per game and get you some decent fantasy points.
Yeah, and he should probably do even better as the season goes on and gets used to his receivers. I'd still like to see the Redskins, and I was just talking before about the coaches and playing certain players over other players, and there's a whole bunch of reasons, even though I don't believe they're as talented. And I think that's what's going on there in Washington. Look, okay, Kelly's a nice guy. Oh, it's a nice story. Okay, he runs hard. Okay, good stiff arm. Okay, it's a nice little thing. But he's not Samaje Perine. Okay, and unless they don't feel confident that Perine can block, like pass block or protect, that kind of, if they don't feel they can do the little things, then I understand. Okay, he's a rookie. If you guys see it, because you see it more than I do, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt for those things. But look, Kelly can't make runs on his own. He needs holes, or he has to stiff arm if he's going to be able to actually find more ways, more running room. So if they want a more dynamic presence, they have one in Perine. And I don't know, is he available in our league? He probably is, right?
Yeah, he's available in most leagues for that reason. Like he hasn't gotten the playing time that he might deserve. So guys like that. If you feel and I say you as in any owners out there, if you feel strongly about a guy, especially if he's a second string guy, and you think he has that potential, and the number one running back in that situation is kind of a weak option, you might want to jump on him now, because as soon as all these players are an injury away or just a bad game away from the second string guy getting a chance.
Yeah, you see, with your situation with Cohen is a little bit different because they had Howard. And you're going, well, how much touches and how much more can one guy do if you already got a guy that had whatever he had? What do you have? 1,200 yards last year or something like that, Howard? I forget how many yards he had.
Yep.
But I guess when you're a team like the Bears and you have no receivers, I guess you're going to throw your running backs a lot. So they're going to wind up getting a lot of touches. So that situation could work. But yeah, with Perine, yeah, you'd have to feel it's more of, okay, your injuries, that's a bad gamble, but okay, you better have good starters to take the chance like that. But it also, more than anything, it has to be like, what, I think, I'm starting to think that, or what, that's when the research comes in. That's when you really have to kind of read between the lines, but hopefully, unless the coach just comes out there and of course and says that somebody's going to get more playing time, but you got to just say, what, I think I could see him getting more playing time, because once it happens like Cohen, that's it. Sometimes it's too late. You can't grab him.
Yeah, that's it. And like you said, it's a double-edged sword. You don't want to take too big of a risk if you don't know what's going on. A lot of times you have to wait and see, that them at least play one game to see, get a feel for how they're going to use a player, and then sometimes if the player really performs, it's a little too late.
Now, what do you do with a guy like Hopkins with Houston, being a big time receiver? Do you feel now? Look, he's already, of course, drafted and he's already landing somewhere. He already is where he is. But you would think, after what we saw on Sunday, that he's probably better off with Watson as the quarterback. And I would think that that's what's going to happen, that Watson will be the quarterback. If Watson's available, which Hopkins isn't, would you even consider him? Look, Prescott was a rookie and played well, but then again, he had a good offensive line, something that Houston's pretty bad at unless they get Dwayne Brown back. But would you even consider Watson as a backup if you know that now he's going to be the starter for Houston?
Yeah, especially in deeper leagues. If you're getting into like the 12, 14 team leagues, and you don't have a solid backup quarterback, Watson's not bad. We saw on Sunday that he's going to get playing time most likely. I mean, there's no way they can continue on with Savage out there, just playing horribly. They got to give themselves a chance. Deshaun Watson's a proven winner. You've been saying that all year, since last year in college. This guy's a winner.
Yeah.
And he was obviously the coaching staff had some confidence in him to put him in there that first game when things weren't looking good. So you got to feel like he's gonna get the playing time and he's gonna improve. And he has some weapons out there. Now I'm not saying he's gonna be a great quarterback this year or top 20 guy even, but he might be that guy who you can put in there in a bye week or if you have a horrible injury at your quarterback position.
Yeah, what do you think about Carson Wentz? I mean, he had he had better plays than bad plays, but there was still some bad plays thrown in there. But look, they won, and he was able to make some plays. So did he make enough? Did he look enough to you that if you don't have one of the top 6 or 7 quarterbacks in the league, would you feel okay if you have a really good team around you to have Carson Wentz as your starter?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Wentz was impressive week one. Like you said, he's never going to be that flawless guy because he takes chances, moves around in the pocket, kind of, free throwing kind of guy. But I mean, he has a lot of talent, and he has some weapons around him also, and he's using them. And the Eagles are, letting him throw the ball. So yeah, I think. I mean, if you talk to Philadelphia Eagles fans, they're gung ho over this guy. They try to tell you he's the top 5 quarterback already in the league. So, definitely if you're a Philadelphia fan, you probably he's probably on your team starting already. But no, I think he's definitely easily a solid guy to have on your team. I'd rather have him right now than like a Eli Manning. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it just shows you, though, just like with Houston with Dwayne Brown, and maybe even Green Bay with Brian Bulaga, and I'd hate to say it with Seattle with Fant out, but because their offensive line is pretty bad anyway. But it does show you that with Odell Beckham out, the Giants are just completely different. And they got Brandon Marshall, they have Shepard. I mean, they couldn't do anything. And I mean, we're not really that surprised when Brandon Marshall, even though he also was a little bit banged up in the preseason, we're not surprised. Look, this is why the Jets got rid of Brandon Marshall. He's not the same guy anymore. And maybe he'll be a lot better for them when he's a number 2 or number 3 when Beckham comes back. But when they can keep an eye on Marshall as the number 1 option, the guy to really maybe worry about, the Giants are in trouble. And that offense, yes, we knew the offensive line was bad, but with the Giants, I don't look at it as, okay, that's just going to be the way they're going to be all year. They get Beckham back. It's not going to matter. I don't believe that. I looked at that game on last night, and I just think it was about Beckham. Without Beckham, that's a completely different team because I don't think the Cowboys offense wowed me. Prescott didn't have his great game. It wasn't like Elliott ran for 200 yards. It's just that the Giants didn't have anything. They didn't have Beckham. Beckham shows that he is that important to that offense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to an extent, but I mean, Brandon Marshall, you're right. He's not a number 1 guy anymore, but you got to get some more out of him than that. I mean, I got to give. I'll put blame on Brandon Marshall, of course, but I gotta put some blame on Eli Manning. You had some weapons out there, or maybe not just Manning. The play calling, McAdoo has to take some blame because you're right about Dallas. I mean, it wasn't like they were world beaters out there, especially offensively. Prescott was okay, somewhat disappointing. A couple times in the red zone couldn't connect with Des Bryant, but the Giants just gave you nothing.
Ugly.
3 points. I mean, they had maybe 1 decent drive, the first drive in the second half, so there's a lot of blame to go around. I just feel like they had enough weapons out there, offensively to show better than they did. I mean, that was an embarrassment.
Yeah, well, it's just another ugly game. I mean, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing we just saw way too many ugly games this weekend in pro and college. And then throw in the fact that, for the Giants, you didn't have their best offensive player that made them. And we've seen Eli have these games anyway. I mean, Eli can play bad. He can sometimes play bad for a month.
Right.
And see, when I look at Eli Manning, I look at a guy that has had a good career. And he's just put together 2 great months in his entire career. and it happened to help him win a Super Bowl. And
Right. And
that's all he's ever done. He's never
yeah.
been this great, consistent quarterback.
Right. Right, and you say he's had a good career, and the reason he's had a good career is because those couple months. I mean, if you take those two runs, those two playoff runs out of it, I mean, what is he? Is he better than average even? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and he's a guy that needs the protection. And see with Seattle, they have Russell Wilson, but even with Russell Wilson, I mean, he's not going to survive. He's just not. I mean, that offensive line is just terrible. And we've criticized the quarterback play in the NFL for years, and now it's time to start questioning the talent level at the offensive line position. It is just really bad in the NFL. It's really bad. It's terrible.
Yeah, it sure looks it.
What happened to all the offense that we saw a few years ago? Remember, all of a sudden everybody was like this explosive offense, and the defense was trying to catch up to the offense. Now it looks completely different. Now all of a sudden, I know it's week one, but
right.
I don't know. I'm not. Again, I think a lot of it's these offensive line. If your quarterback play isn't great and your offensive line isn't great, I don't know how these offenses are going to look like they did a few years ago. I just can't see it. I think the defense has somehow caught up to them. Well, not somehow, but they have.
Yeah, and we'll see. Like you said, it's week one. I mean, the old adage is that the offense takes longer than defense to come together. But we'll see. I feel like a few years ago it started to change. Like offenses were on fire from day one. But all of a sudden this year, I mean, it really looked clear yesterday that these offenses, I don't know what it is. Like you said, it could be offensive line play, or maybe the defenses are ahead of the offenses. But it was across the board, really.
All right, what are you looking forward to tonight? First game's getting underway in about a half hour. New Orleans and Minnesota. I'm actually kind of like the two dogs tonight, and the reason is it's the NFL. I'll go with Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers in those matchups against Simeon and Bradford in games that I think are very even though they're on the road. I'm interested to see New Orleans defense because I did think, Dennis Allen's a pretty good defensive coach. They got a little bit better players to fit the system. I think they're going to be a little bit better. Adrian Peterson obviously is returning to Minnesota, but they got Kamara now as a rookie. Ingram had a very good year last year. We'll find out if they can have a secondary receiving option next to Michael Thomas. Armstead's out. That's a big loss for them. Their best lineman. For Minnesota, the big thing is Cook, the rookie running back, and their offensive line. Offensive line was also terrible for them last year, so they supposedly got better. They get Cook. And then for the Chargers and for Denver, it's Trevor Siemian again. The great defense of Denver. What about the running game? Because the offensive line for Denver wasn't good last year. And then you've got the Chargers, who defense is better. You've got Ingram and Bosa on the same team. That has the potential to be the best defense we've seen in LA now for a while. And then Phillip Rivers. And again, Phillip Rivers' time is starting to run out soon before he can make a serious run, at least to the postseason, before he even can think about getting to the Super Bowl. But big games, especially maybe the Chargers, because of the fact they're on the road in a division matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you too. Pretty evenly matched games. Denver, obviously the great defense. But like you said, Phillip Rivers has seen it all. He's capable of having a big game against anybody, really. He has healthy wide receivers, it looks like,
for one
now.
game.
Yeah, for one game. So we'll see. And I do not like Denver's offense. I don't know how you can. Simeon hasn't really shown much ever. So that's pretty scary. You got C.J. Anderson at running back. I'm not all that confident in him. Like you said, the offensive line has been shaky. As far as the New Orleans game, so I'm really interested to see how Adrian Peterson looks. We haven't really seen anything in preseason. No. Haven't really heard anybody talking about it. You got to think he might have something left in the tank, and if anybody does, I mean, he's been a freak his whole career, so he's got to be capable of big things. But you haven't really heard any whispers like that coming out of there. So that'll be interesting. Drew Brees is going to show up. I think you got to give the edge to New Orleans in that game, just based off Brees and Sean Payton. So we'll see.
So who's the top receiver tonight? Would it be Michael Thomas?
You mean in general?
Yeah, for the entire night, yes.
Entire night? Yeah. you got to go Michael Thomas, and a lot of it is Drew Brees.
Sure.
I mean, he's going to throw it. He's going to be accurate. They're going to most likely put points on the board, and Thomas is probably going to be the beneficiary.
All right, so Friday, and you'll be with us every Monday for Fantasy Report, Fantasy Recap on this show. And then, of course, we have our Fantasy Show on Friday mornings. This Friday, we're going to air the show an hour later, which is fine by me, 11 o'clock instead of 10. So we'll do the show at 11 o'clock Eastern on Friday, and we'll get everybody ready for Week 2. Well, what's the Thursday night game, by the way, that will be and I will make sure I watch the game on Thursday in time. I will have more time this week. So what's the Thursday night game this week?
The Thursday night game. I wasn't prepared for that.
I know I saw there was a pretty bad game coming up in a week or two.
Houston, Cincinnati.
Oh, jeez.
So two teams that look terrible.
Really, at least they got at least that's a perfect game to have Deshaun Watson play.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Oh, he's got to start. He's got to start.
Yeah. Yeah, he has to. He has to start. And then Cincinnati, who was getting booed at home game 1, they're back at home. So that should be
hey,
that should be
Baltimore was one of my sleepers, so they looked awfully good. And that was a situation where they rested a quarterback, and he looked okay. Now, Denny Woodhead, any word on what his situation is? Because it immediately, which is one of the reasons why I thought Baltimore would actually be better this year offensively, was because, Macklin got the touchdown. That was one. And two was Danny Woodhead, who until the injury, automatically early in that game, you could see how often Flacco is going to use Woodhead.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything new. Obviously, went out with the hamstring.
But nothing serious. Nothing serious as far as we know right now.
As far as we know, but you know how the hamstring is. It can linger on. Who knows if he'll be ready to go on Thursday on a short week. So we'll see. But like you said, Baltimore was pretty impressive. I mean, people forgot, even from a fantasy perspective, people forgot all about Macklin. He wasn't high on anybody's board. He was almost forgotten because he was in Baltimore. And, he had a big game. And then even a guy like Terrence West, another guy who wasn't high on running back boards, he produced. He had over 80 yards rushing and I think a touchdown or so. So Baltimore, interesting team. But, Cincinnati was the opposite. I mean, they were just disgusting. So
yeah, they were pretty bad. And, look, if their offense doesn't pick it up, because Dalton didn't play well, if the offense doesn't pick it up, it will be interesting to find out, because they talk up Dalton like he's, the franchise there. It will be interesting to see at any point if they decide, to give McCarron a shot, because why do you have him otherwise? I mean, that's only if Dalton plays like this a few more weeks. If he just, for whatever reason, if there's just something missing from Andy Dalton and he's just not, maybe he's finally mentally damaged enough in Cincinnati, or it could be one game, or it could be something that lingers for a few more games. Will they give McCarron a shot? Because there's as we said, there's so many bad quarterbacks in the NFL. If you've got young guys on the bench like McCarron, it's like they deserve a chance. Just how do we know? We have no idea if A.J. McCarron could be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He could be.
Right. And, like you said, it'll take probably a few more weeks of Dalton. I mean, Dalton is an accomplished quarterback in the league.
It'll take a while.
One of those guys, almost like a Cousins, where, you're not all that happy to have him, but he's definitely, like you said, a franchise guy in this league where there are a bunch of horrible quarterbacks. He's definitely not, on the worst.
No, he's not horrible.
End of that. So he's not horrible.
No,
but
he had a horrible game, but he's not.
He had a horrible game, and right, nobody's safe really. I mean, only a couple guys are really safe, and he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt if he has 3 or 4 horrible games in a row.
I remember 2 years ago when because Green, of course, the injury last year killed it, but 2 years ago, Andy Dalton had some pretty impressive fantasy stats.
Oh yeah, and he's known for that. He's a guy that you don't really want to take, but you'd probably be satisfied if you have him.
But here's the difference, and this just shows you again how Cincinnati, when they do business, they draft well, but when they let Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones go, that killed them. It killed their offense. It killed Dalton. It killed the offense, and then Green got hurt, and then so and we're not talking about special players, but those were key guys to their offense. Having Jones on the outside, Sanu on the slot, and a star receiver with Eifert and Bernard at the time, and even Hill, I think a couple of years ago was okay. They had a pretty and they had Whitworth, and that offense could score. They could put up points, and a lot's changed. Whitworth is gone, Jones is gone, Sanu is gone. This is what happens when you let guys go. So
yeah, and then now the running back situation, they still have Giovanni, and they still have Hill, and now they put Mixon in the mix. So they got to figure that out, who's going to get touches. So they have issues.
All right. So again, you said Cincinnati, Houston is Thursday night, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Cincinnati, Houston, Thursday.
Cincinnati, Houston. I made a mistake and said that Woodhead would be on short rest. No, they play Sunday. It's Cincinnati plays Thursday.
So Cincinnati, Houston, and where is it?
It is in Cincinnati.
Okay, so Houston at Cincinnati on Thursday. We'll recap that game on Friday morning on our fantasy coverage on the Ourlads Football Network, and then of course you're going to have your reports out all week at ourlads.com, your fantasy reports. So. And then you've got your Twitter account. People out there listening can follow you on Twitter at Blackatologist. Of course, we'll also tweet out at PrimeSN anytime we have your articles posted at Ourlads to get everybody ready for the new week. And then tomorrow you'll have some stuff posted, including the free agents to keep an eye on, some of the ones that we've already talked about, and of course injury updates and much more. So Jamal, appreciate your time. We'll talk to you on Friday.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamal. That's Jamal Murphy. And again, you can check out his podcast, the one with Bill Roden. It's the Bill Roden on Sports podcast on iTunes. All right. So that'll pretty much wrap it up. The game's coming up tonight, so stay tuned for that. And we will also talk to you with the other shows later this week. We've got a bunch of other OFN shows. Matter of fact, what do we have? Our next shows are, where are we? We've got every Wednesday at 4 o'clock with Dan Shonka starting this Wednesday. We have an OFN show with Tony Mejia every Thursday to get you ready for the week in the NFL. And we have our fantasy show on Friday. So thanks to Jamal Murphy. I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you next time on the Ourlads Football Radio Network.
Transmissions, where was you? Now try to keep us all down and hope that we will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another package like to keep us trapped in.